Hello everyone and welcome to a very interesting game from round 5 of this year's Chennai Grandmasters. I know a lot of you were probably waiting for an Arjun game, but his unstoppable run came to a halt, not due to a loss, but due to a draw versus Parham Maksudlu. It was a fairly interesting game, but yeah, ended in a draw after a threefold repetition. But we have someone who is very, very close to Arjun, in close pursuit, only half a point behind him, but we're going to get to that after we check out the game. So it's Levon Aronian versus Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and I would say this is a really important game for them because they've faced each other so many times. They've faced each other 46 times, and out of those 46 times, the score is a tie. 7 wins for MVL, 7 wins for Levon, and 32 draws. So this is really a big one. Whoever wins, well, gets bragging rights, so let's check it out. And interestingly, they repeat a game, well, up to a certain point. They played in 2017 in the FIDE World Cup. So let's check it out. Pawn to d4 by Levon. We have knight to f6 by MVL, pawn to c4, g6, and pawn to f3. This is the anti-Grunfeld variation, and what's funny about the anti-Grunfeld variation is that the best reply to an anti-Grunfeld is to just continue playing the Grunfeld with pawn to d5. But okay, MVL also loves to mix it up. Pawn to c5. MVL really likes the Sicilian, so this is almost like playing a dragon. So, you know, you're playing right into MVL's hand here. Pawn to d5 and now pawn to d6. We have knight to c3 and pawn to a6. You could go into some, sorry, not pawn to a6, pawn to e6, going for some sort of a Benoni setup. We have pawn to e4 and bishop to g7. We have knight g to e2 and now pawn to a6. And this is where we part ways with the game from 2017. In 2017, Castle's kingside was played by MVL, and I could even show you the entire game. It's a fairly short game, some 25 moves maybe. If it's not going to be too long a video, I'm going to return to this position after we check out the game. But Levon did win that game in 2017, so of course MVL looking to strike back. And he plays pawn to a6, doesn't burn all that much time, so obviously he has something prepared. How, you know, it's hard to say whether he knew that it was going to be this position exactly. But probably, you know, yeah, if you're a grandmaster at MVL's level, you lose a classical game, of course you analyze it afterwards. Pawn to a4. Now you have to stop pawn to b5. In the game in 2017, Levon continued with knight to g3. We have queen to e7, d captures on e6, f captures, and now bishop to f4. So okay, the d6 pawn is weak, much like you would have in a Sicilian defense. Let's say if a Marozzi bind structure was played. Pawn to e5 and now bishop to g5. This does give you the d4 square, but again it leaves an even bigger hole on d5. We have knight to c6 and knight to d5. Attacking the queen, of course the knight cannot move. We have queen to d8 and now knight e to c3. Now, even if the knight captures at some point, you can even bring another knight to d5 if you so prefer. Knight to d4, we have bishop to d3 and castles kingside by both of them. Castles, and bishop to e6. Okay, all standard moves here, nothing new being played. Knight to e2, attacking the knight. Knight captures, we have bishop captures, and now rook to f7. And here we have queen to d2. So what is Levon's plan? Levon's plan is that, okay, he has incredible pressure here on the f6 knight. The knight cannot move. The rook also very weirdly placed there. If the queen even moves, the rook and bishop will have to guard the knight here. And the center is amazing for Levon. The knight, I mean, you can't really do anything with black here. And once this pawn comes to a5, the knight comes to b6, you will control the entire board. But sometimes it's not enough to just control the board. Sometimes you also have to have, you know, the possibility of an active idea. And I'm pretty sure you guys know what the active idea in this position will be. We have queen to f8, unpinning while still keeping sort of a defensive setup towards that d6 pawn. Knight to b6 attacking the rook, rook to d8, and now rook a to d1. We have pawn to h6 attacking the bishop, and the bishop back to e3. We have rook to c7, and now what is Levon's idea? Well, you could play many things here. You could maybe play rook f2, maybe double up on the f file, maybe move the queen, maybe double up on the d file, maybe try to organize some sort of an attack against the d6 pawn. You could improve your position with a5. You could play something like g3, h4, maybe h5 in the future. All of this is possible, but there is one move that you can never be wrong in playing, and that is pawn to b4. And this is the active idea I was talking about. C captures on b4 and queen captures on b4. Again, putting a lot of pressure on that d6 pawn. We have rook to c6, adding another defender, and now pawn to a5. We have pawn to h5 and knight to d5. And while you really hate the knight on d5 remaining there, it would be even worse if you captured on d5. You don't even have to calculate this. You just know this from experience. We have rook to d7 and bishop to d3. We have rook to f7, trying to see what Levon will do, as MVL is pretty much tied up here completely. Bishop to c2 and king to h7. We have bishop to f2 and rook back to c8. We have knight to b6 attacking the rook and rook to d8, and now a second active idea by Levon, pawn to c5. Again, maybe you could improve this a little bit further, maybe put a bishop on b3, maybe play something like rook d3, rook f to d1, but c5 right away is also perfectly fine. And now, even though both of them have the bishop pair, Levon's bishop pair is just that much better. D captures on c5, we have bishop captures attacking the queen. And now, what do you even play here? Where can the queen go? You could go to h8. I mean, unless you're alpha 0, you're not putting the queen on h8. Queen g8, queen to e8 maybe, but on e8, yeah, on e8 like bishop to a4. Terrible idea. So queen to g8, and now rook captures on d8, queen captures, and rook to d1, activating all of the pieces. And look at MVL's pieces. This is just horrid. This is no way to play chess, and you should I'm sure you guys are ashamed of even watching a game like this. We have queen to g8. Even worse, look at this. I mean, look at this setup. This is like I don't know what this is like. This is like, you know, if you grab the pieces and just squash them together. We have bishop to e7, putting pressure on the knight. This is, again, beautiful chess by Levon, not even allowing some active moves like rook to c7, just, you know, keeping everything there, preparing knight to d5 to put even more pressure on that f6 knight, because what's MVL gonna play? He can just play a move like bishop to h6. Okay, it activates the bishop. Not really, but again, it will leave the knight unguarded. So knight to d5 is definitely Levon's plan. Bishop to h6, as it is the only active move MVL has, and now knight to d5. Now you have to capture it as much as you hate it. Bishop captures, we have e captures. Now Levon gets a passed pawn. Queen to c8, attacking the bishop, and just bishop to b3. That's why I said some 8 moves ago that maybe, you know, before executing pawn to c5, maybe you play bishop to b3, simply to avoid any tempo moves in the future by MVL. And now we have pawn to e4. Already a difficult position by MVL. The engine says maybe it's possible to hold, but you have to play some really, you know, engine-like moves like knight d7, rook to f4 to attack the queen. Then you gain control over the e4 square. Maybe you push a little bit, and maybe you hold, but only maybe. However, after bishop b3, MVL rushed it with pawn to e4, and now it also comes with a trick. MVL is a very, very tricky guy. Levon doesn't fall for it, but imagine what would happen if f captures and e4 was played. It looks like a free pawn. But the problem is bishop e3 check. Now you cannot play king f1, you go under the mask of the rook, and if king h1, knight g4, and you resign here. There is nothing to go play here. Knight to f2 check is coming, and if you try to stop that, let's say bishop to h2, then you attack the bishop further, and now you're just going to lose material, or you play bishop e1, and then you get checkmated because you've disconnected the rook from defending the f1 square. So after pawn to e4, pawn to d6 by Levon, not falling for it, just attacking the rook here, and MVL realizes that he is just dead in the water here. He goes for bishop to e3 check, king to f1, king h1 is also playable, king to f1 looks a bit nicer as you kind of go in front of the rook. Queen to f5, trying to sacrifice the rook here, and if Levon captures, then it's still very interesting. For example, captures e captures on f3, anything can still happen here. You have to play a move like g4 just to stay in the game. But after queen f5, Levon not falling for that, just queen c4. If he captures on f7, it will be with check. We have rook to g7, stepping out of the way, and now queen to e6. A really, cold as a cucumber move would be something like bishop to c2, but Levon says no, there's no reason to go for that. Queen to e6 offers a queen trade. Of course, MVL cannot trade because then the pass pawn is just winning. So he goes queen to b5, puts pressure on the bishop, also gives a nice check here, but just bishop to c4. I mean, also it's not that as if the bishop was hanging, but yeah, bishop to c4. Queen to b2, one last trick going for checkmate, and now there is only one winning move for Levon here, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. It could be anything, feel free to pause the video and win the game for Levon while I give you a couple of seconds. I'm only tricking you guys. It's the only move to avoid checkmate, and that is bishop to e2. This is what Levon played, and now that's pretty much it. Knight to g8 was played to sort of stay in the game, but bishop to f8, and it was in this position on move 44 that MVL resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You could try something like e captures on f3, but after g captures, there are no checks, there are no tricks, there are nothing to even try here, like bishop to h6, you can play just pawn to d7, pawn to d8, and that's it. You win the game. And also, I wanted to show you the standings. Arjun, absolutely incredible. Okay, his winning streak was stopped by Parham by getting a draw in round 5, but still 4 points out of 5. Absolutely incredible. But Levon only trailing by half a point, 3.5 out of 5. Amin Tabatabai 3 out of 5. Aravind Chitambaram 2.5 out of 5. Parham Maksulu 2 and MVL 2. And sharing last place Alexis Arana and Vidit Gujarati with 1.5 out of 5. So that's the game. Those are the standings after round 5. Hope you enjoyed it. And now for those of you who are interested, only briefly, we'll go through that game from 2017 from the FIDE World Cup, where they played the exact same line up to this point, only instead of a6 castles was played by MVL. And okay, we have knight to g3, as I mentioned in the game, now pawn to a6, pawn to a4, so a pretty similar setup, but here MVL started attacking, pawn to h5. We have bishop to g5, queen to c7 on pinning, we have queen to d2, and e captures on d5. We have c captures and knight to h7. So already looks a little bit better than what MVL got in this game 7 years later. We have bishop to h6 going after a trade, pawn to h4, and now bishop captures on g7. King captures, and now bishop to c4. A beautiful piece sacrifice here. H captures, now rook to h8 and pawn to e5. Levon really went all out here, but I mean, why not, as MVL's queenside is completely undeveloped. Not bishop to d7, queen to e7 was played, and now Levon just cold-bloodedly castles queenside. We have knight to d7, e captures on d6, queen captures, and knight to e4, attacking the queen, queen to e5, and pawn to d6. Very important to free up the light square bishop, but also, I mean, the pawn on d6 is very nice. Pawn to g5 was played, and now rook h to e1, and regardless of being down a piece, you can see that you can feel that this position is just so much better for Levon. Pawn to b5, we have bishop to d5 attacking the rook, rook b8, and pawn to f4. Attacked the queen, queen to d4, and now queen to e2. This was actually a pretty big blunder, because queen to e2, and not much for the black queen to do. We're gonna go discovered by the knight, by the pawn. Queen to b4 was played, pretty much the only square, and now queen to h5, and here MVL resigned because, well, knight captures and g5 is coming, then the f7 pawn becomes weak. There's nothing you can even try here. It's just a dead lost position. But yeah, interestingly, MVL sort of found an improvement, but it's hard to say which game he lost worse, this one or that one. In both, you can see how he suffered from underdevelopment, and Levon is the last person you want to be underdeveloped against. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and the other one as well. I would like to thank Robert Arathun, Rupert Miles, Cassius Johnson, Jeffrey Johnson, and Dan McCormick for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, such as this one, and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.